Hey, Mortgage Coach community, Dave Savage here, and today I am sitting down with my first interview with Jessie Beaudoin. Did I
Yep,
get that right, Jesse?
that's correct. Yeah, that's pretty
Hello.
good, man. Awesome.
That is pretty good. So this is my first interview with Jessie, and I think some of you in our community might go, "Oh, Jessie's in the Mortgage Coach community. That's cool." And then some of you are like, "Who's Jessie?" And right? I mean,
Yep.
if you were a realtor, there's a really good chance you'd know Jessie. If you were at Inman Connect, or not Inman Connect, but Inman Disconnect, you would definitely know Jessie.
Right.
And I've met Jessie a number of times over the years at different events. You were also once upon a time a Mortgage Coach user, is that right?
That is correct. I was using Mortgage Codes 20 years ago, probably somewhere right around there. I don't know. When did you start Mortgage Coach originally?
20 years ago,
20 years ago. All
about,
right. So
yeah.
I was originally in the mortgage business in '87. And I was attracted to nice, shiny objects. But what I did remember is when I saw Mortgage Coach, I was like, okay, this is really going to be a nice value add for me to bring to my customers and make, a point of differentiation for me as a loan officer and make myself a consultant versus just a loan hack. So I grasped it onto that really, really hard right from the very, very beginning. And did that through my entire career as a mortgage lender until I really kind of transitioned more so into this online space. So, loved it. Still do. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you on the call. Again, we've had conversations at different events over the years. The last time we were in Portland, we had breakfast. But folks, this is what the conversation's about today. There is clear disruption happening in our space, and not just in our space, but in the real estate space. And I have advocated a number of times that mortgage professionals should be going to the Inman Connect event because that's where some of the most innovative realtors are at. And if you want to be a leader to agents, you should go to the places where they're learning from leaders.
Right.
And there was an event last week called Inman Disconnect. So Jessie, why don't you first just describe that to mortgage loan officers and to our community? What was it?
Yeah, sure. Well, first and foremost, I'll say I originally got started because I was really curious about going to Inman events at the very beginning for that same reason that you're talking about. I thought that the only way I could be a cutting edge loan officer back in the day was if I knew where my ultimate customer, which is basically the real estate agent, I have to work with them and provide a high level of service to them, what they were thinking and what the conversations that they were having, because that's how it was really easy for us to basically build rapport with those customers. But I got involved in that Inman community, and I've been to probably 20 Inman Connects over the years. And kind of because I've attended so often, worked my way into knowing a fair amount of people through that environment, know Brad personally, and a lot of the people that are hyper involved in that community, and been fortunate enough to be invited to this thing called Inman Disconnect. This is actually the second one of these. The first one was last year up in Napa Valley. And what Brad from Inman News is trying to basically do is this event of getting really the movers and the shakers of the industry. So, the leaders of all of the biggest franchises, the leaders of all of the biggest technology companies that are out there, the leaders of the MLS, basically the people that are on the front lines and bearing, can steer the ship of what the future of the real estate industry is going to look like from multiple different levels and different touch points, all together so that you can really have some intelligent conversations and kind of figure out what, where are we going and what's the problems that we're facing and what's on the horizon kind of coming down. Because if we're focused only in the now, that's really the past. Right? Because even what I just said right now is already the past. So you have to be thinking so far ahead of where things are kind of going and having your line on your eyes on the horizon to really figure out where things are going. And the goal of Inman in this particular event was getting those people together and maybe putting together some principles in terms of what should this future look like, and everyone who's participating in it, what are some general ideas that future should look like? Because there's a lot of disruption that's happening, but the core of the people that are involved, the people that are running these franchises and the agents and the MLS, they're involved in this mix. And so they need to be ready to kind of move forward and adapt some of this change, but also have some core fundamentals in terms of, we don't want to seem being, too protectionist in terms of moving forward, because that's going to, being protectionist also can kind of allow a bigger gap for a disruptor to come in and really change the landscape. So it's really bringing in that initial event. So it was an awesome event out in the desert, getting a bunch of people together, having really high level conversations in a super casual environment where there was no name tags, no basically titles exchanged, just, meeting people face to face, shaking hands, getting belly to belly, and getting to know them and their problems, and discussing what the future might look like. So
that is just awesome. That's awesome. Well, it got on my radar a few different ways.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was Josh Metal had sent me a message. And if you don't know Josh, our community knows him well. He's one of America's top team leaders. They did almost 300 million last year in production. And he's like, Dave, we need to go to this. Can you get me in? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I knew it was happening. And I sent out a post saying, who in our community is at this event? And boom, Jess, you're there. So before we get into the principles, how many folks were there, just to get a feel for the venue and the
about 150, 200, somewhere right around. I don't know what the exact count was, but definitely less than 200 for sure. So
okay, so mortgage coach community, think of it like this: you're a loan officer, and you're going to now hear from a guy who's been a loan officer, a mortgage coach. We'll talk a little bit more about who Jesse is and what he does in the real estate space. But he spent, 3 days at the Parker, super cool resort in Palm Springs. And so paint that venue and now pay attention to the takeaways. So now what I want to do, Jesse, we got that article posted called The 12 Parker Principles, a Real Estate Manifesto. We're going to put a link below. I'm pretty sure you guys will be able to just click on that link and read it, although there is a chance that you might be behind a wall and you need to sign up for Inman, which I think you should do. But nevertheless, Jesse, give us some high level on, if you want to kind of remember the principles to do it, or if you want to go your own principles, what did you learn from that event? And let's include the principles, but also if there are some things outside of the principles that you think are important, bring it.
So I think one of the things is to understand how it was kind of organized and how these principles kind of arose. And what happened is we took these, Brad set up this event, and we got these couple hundred people, thought leaders of all these different industries. And if you go through some of the principles, what you'll find is that they all cover kind of one aspect of the business. So like, for example, I sat in on the data one, because for me, that's kind of important, right? It's this access to data. As a technology provider involved around real estate, this is a pretty important part of our business, basically, is having access to data. And I had some fellow friends that were there, such as Andrew Flatchner, who has a company called Real Scout. And his business is dependent upon MLS data to be able to provide his services. So the conversation was, David Sharon, head of basically one of the largest MLSs in the country, Andrew, technology provider, some people from Zoom there, some people from Corefax, all together talking about data because we all had some interest in this. And what ended up taking place is we just talked about, like, what's the difficulty that Andrew has as a technology provider. And so for him, he felt that the lack of access to MLS data and the fact that it's all fragmented across a bunch of different MLSs creates unnecessary difficulty in terms of being able to be innovative. So he talked about his pain point of building these relationships with 500 or 600 different MLSs so that he could basically create a good product and roll that out. And the cost that was associated with aggregating that data, having to spend millions of dollars multiple times over and over and over, and how each tech innovator in that space is needing to do it on their own. And it's this duplicated work. And what would happen if we took away that roadblock and through one of these Parker principles, maybe making open data a little bit more available, to access that information? Could we create more innovative products and accelerate the growth of real estate and streamline the process by having access to that data. So it's really interesting to see it from all of these different points of view, because then you have David, who kind of represents the MLS and the broker intent, what their point of view is, like who actually owns that data. If I took the time as a real estate agent to aggregate that data, do I really want it to get into the hands of, a technology company that might be trying to disrupt me directly? And so conversations around those kind of things is what it really took place. So we broke off into these small kind of intimate groups, sometimes sitting around basically, a campfire late at night with some cocktails, or at the bar, or whatever it might have been, or through these really cool activities such as some horseback riding and architectural tours and things like that. But at the core, we all broke out these 200 people into small groups, 10, 15, 20 people, and went really deep on the issues that we were personally most passionate about. And that became basically these Parker principles, which were pretty interesting from each person's point of view, from the eclectic crowd of these industry leaders. So, like you said, you kind of have the documentation there, some of them, and I'll just kind of go through them, transform our industry from sales to service. So there was a lot of conversation around this. And I think this is really important for also the mortgage coach community, right? Is now that when information becomes transparent, such as rates and when Lending Tree came out and things like that, what is really our business at this point? Is it our thing to kind of spam and jam someone and try and jam them into and sell them into a product? Or are we trying to deliver a professional service that consults that person to get into the best loan possible for them and deliver that wrapped around the best possible experience? Because service is an experience, right? And so how can we make the overall real estate experience much better than what it is currently? And there was a lot of talk of mortgage. I can tell you that was a really key thing, because part of everyone that was there that discussed about being part of the real estate transaction, mortgage was a friction point, and so this is something that people are trying to solve, really quickly. Companies that are out there, there is some disruption happening in that mortgage space as well, and that's just kind of coming over time.
Hey, Jesse, real quick before we go, was there anybody from the mortgage space there kind of representing, or was it all real estate?
Yeah,
real estate?
There was one or two people from Loan Depot where Anthony from Loan Depot wasn't there, but I think there was one or two of his people, and someone from Better Mortgage, I believe, was there. I didn't connect with those people personally, because just, only 2 days to connect with a couple hundred people is kind of tough, basically. But there was definitely talk about that. I spent a lot of time with some of the other technology vendors, which was really interesting, and leads us kind of into the second tier, which is, simplify the process of buying and selling a home. Again, this talk was a lot about the mortgage side of things, because that's kind of the friction point. So companies like Open Door, I got a chance to talk to the co-founder of Open Door and really dig deep into what their big vision is in terms of what they're trying to change. And what they're trying to do is simplify this process of buying and selling. And that process includes the mortgage process in there. If we make basically access to capital a little bit easier, why shouldn't it happen a little bit faster? Alex Perillo, who some of you guys may know, but he was basically the leader of Realogy Forward for a really long time and ran all of the major franchises, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, and all that were all wrapped under that Realogy brand. Alex got up and says, listen, I don't understand why I can go down here today in Palm Springs and go buy a $200,000 Mercedes in about 30 seconds, realistically 30 minutes. It's an asset that could drive off and move around. But if I wanted to come here and buy a $200,000 condo, it's going to take me 30 or 40 days. Why is this happening? And so these are the kind of conversations that people were having around the mortgage space, basically, that I think are really, it's something that people are going to be thinking about. And the big takeaways for your community is you as well should be kind of thinking about these processes, because we're part of, we're one of the cogs in that big wheel in terms of making those transactions basically happen. And so there is some stuff that is going to happen, some significant changes that are probably on the horizon. I think Loan Depot, when I was at the Inman Connect event, not Disconnect, but Connect, I know that they're working on some new types of mortgage products that are pretty interesting. And I think that maybe the future of a single day close on mortgages is not that far away. So what ends up happening in a scenario like that, how does that impact our industry in terms of the mortgage space? And where do we kind of fit in all of that stuff? So that's why having your eye on the horizon and what's kind of coming down is so that you can adapt and fit your place in here, because we're all still going to be here in one way, shape, or form or another. You just got to figure out where. And if you're not paying attention to that now, those people are going to end up nowhere.
No doubt. Well, hey, let's do this, because I like to keep these as quick hits.
Yep.
So I want to do one more of the 12.
Yep.
And I think the one around transparency fits, because it's, you know, it's that whole, our community believes in being an advisor and a coach.
Yep.
We believe in creating experience.
Yep.
And then part of that is through transparency and technology. So I want to get your color on that. And then I want to have a, you know, close out with folks that want to connect with you and your community, know what you do. But let's wrap it up in about 3 minutes. But talk about transparency and how that was created a principle and what that conversation looked like.
Yeah. So part of the transparency around this stuff is, you know, this idea that, you know, some of the talks was around, you know, the mortgage space. So everyone all being connected, really having transparency into the transaction itself, right? Not just, you know, my lender said this and nobody else kind of knows, but really opening that up so that there's no surprises for anybody that's involved. Also transparency in terms of cost of services and cost of goods that are basically being provided. That was a pretty big thing. And then the value of that transparency too, like what is, and beyond the transaction, like how much are MLS people basically making, and what's the, you know, standard kind of core fees around the transaction, and giving the consumer the ultimate ability to really understand where things are kind of coming from. And if there's transparency, then there might be savings that are available, and how can we bypass that savings down to the consumer at the end and maybe lower the overall cost of the transaction. Because if we lower the overall cost of the transaction, we may actually increase the velocity of the number of transactions. Maybe people will not move once every 10 years, but if we can actually increase the velocity of that transaction, and there's some companies really approaching this in an interesting way, then there's actually more business, not less business, by being more transparent. So I thought that was a kind of a really interesting thing. That solved, you know, affordable housing, it solves our current inventory issues, solves a lot of different things by having that transparency in there into cost and responsibility. So that was
no doubt.
That was a pretty good step.
No doubt. And by the way, number 4 was all about raising the standards of professionalism. We could go on. We're going to put a link to that article below. But mortgage coach community, it's more important than ever that you are a leader to the agents that you serve, that you deliver a total cost analysis at the point of sale, because it is transparency, it is education, it does create experience and connection for people. So Jessie, if folks want to follow you on social, if people want to know more about what you do, if you could just, you know, share what you do and how to connect with you real quick.
Yeah, we run a little company called callaction.co. We're a fairly new company, and the problem we're just trying to solve basically is the communication problem in terms of having conversations and giving you scale to have kind of one-on-one conversations by responding to maybe leads that you're purchasing in a quick and easy manner, and basically simplifying or automating some of the follow-up for those customers that are not ready to do something right away. And we work with both the real estate and the mortgage community, and really work to kind of create these partnerships to track basically what's happening on all of that stuff. Because if we could deliver really high levels of service by clear and consistent and fast communication with both the real estate community and with the consumers directly, it raises the bar basically. We seem more professional, It ensures that we're going to, you know, take one of the two tiers that technology usually kind of creates, which is going to be about service and experience and cost, or basically less service, less cost, and so on and so forth. So, you know, the divide of what technology normally does to industry is usually pretty clear, and you just have to pick which one of those two paths you're going to go down. And, you know, we just help as part of that process. So it's callaction.co. You can find us at callaction_co on Twitter, and just Jessie Beaudoin. I'm pretty active on socials, so usually I'm not too difficult to find if you look for my name. And if you can spell my name, Beaudoin, not too many of us out there. So usually pretty easy to get a hold of us. So, but again, I really appreciate it. You know, I know for you, Dave, I just want to say that, you know, early on in my career, you really changed it with Mortgage Coach, and having this thought process of really trying to serve the customers was really high level for me. It had a big impact in the early part of my business, and it still has an impact today in terms of what our business is and what we're trying to accomplish is really trying to raise that bar, deliver service, deliver experiences, and be professionals in our industry, no matter what it is, basically. So just wanted to give you a big shout out and a thanks for that, because it was really formative for us early on in my career when I was just a young buck.
Yeah, right. Jesse. Well, hey, man, I'm looking forward to building the partnership, friendship. I love your shirt, never stop exploring.
Yeah.
And, right? And,
yeah,
and
exactly.
I think in 2018, if you're a referral-based local professional, you got to explore. You got to get new habits. You need to upgrade how you leverage tech, because most people have more technology to drive experience than you're using. You know, so, you know, how are you using Mortgage Coach? How are you using CRM? How are you using communication platforms like Jesse's? Will really define your success. And it's no longer like, hey, the early adopter thing. It's like, if you don't get your tech game on and you don't really form the heart of a teacher and advisor, I mean, it's going to be really tough going here on out. So everybody's watching it. If you got a takeaway, give us a like. You're watching this on YouTube, like it, share it with your mortgage friends. There'll be a link below to the Inman article. Also, I'll put a link below to the next Inman event. Again, can't encourage you enough to check it out, and I'll also put a link so you can follow and connect with Jesse. Jesse, thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. You have a great day, and we'll circle back around soon, and we'll keep on exploring for new knowledge.
Right on. Let's go, brother.